That Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, and in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And so he was teaching people in the temple in the early morning. And then the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, when they had caught her in the very act, and they set her into the midst of the people. And so they say to him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. And then in verse 5, they talk about the law again, because they're so obsessed with the law. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what sayest thou? So they're questioning him here. So then we read in verse 6, this they said, tempting him that they might have to accuse him. So then we read, but Jesus stooped down with his finger, wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So he's kind of like just writing on the ground. It says he wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So it seems like he's kind of ignoring them. And then we read in verse 7, so when they continued asking him, he then lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. He says, okay, if you're going to condemn her, if any one of you have never sinned once, you go ahead, throw the first stone. And then eventually we read in verse 8, and again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. So then he continued writing on the ground, whatever he was writing. And then we read in verse 9, they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last, and Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. So he convicted them just by saying, he who was without sin cast the first stone. And they got convicted so badly to where they all eventually just started leaving, because they realized, like, we're all sinful. They were convicted of their own sin just by Jesus saying that. And so this shows us, who are we to condemn other people when we do the same sins and we're all sinful? So we shouldn't condemn people, but we should help them, right? Help them live righteous lifestyles, help them live lifestyles free from sin. We shouldn't condemn people for their sin, right? Because we're sinners ourselves, right? We're not righteous without Jesus. Our righteousness comes from Jesus, but the Bible tells us that our righteousness in itself is filthy rags. And so we're not righteous on our own. Jesus makes us righteous. And so we're called to have righteous judgment, but also to have compassion and show love to other people, not condemning them, but trying to help bring them to repentance, right?